What's going on, guys? This is Empty Box, and today we're going to be talking about the newest update to iRacing, the Season 3 2014 update, which really isn't all that impressive of an update on paper. There's not really a whole lot of stuff to talk about, other than the fact that there's actually stuff to talk about, which makes no sense at all, but you'll probably figure it out throughout the course of this video. So let's go ahead and start by talking about the 3 new pieces of content. There is a 4th piece of content, which is the DW12 Indy car and all of its packages, but that's not necessarily new, but it kind of is. But we'll save that for last, because I was always told you should save the best for last. The new track for this season in iRacing on the road side of things is Donington Park, which is a fairly fast-flowing circuit located in England that has hosted a couple of Formula 1 races, including a very wet race in which Senna passed basically half the field in like 2 laps, because Senna, I guess. But this is a track that I foresee being very popular within iRacing because it is fairly easy. It's not overly technical, not overly challenging or anything like that, but it's not boring to drive. It feels like every corner was placed for a reason, and that keeps it fun and exciting. I think this one is going to be very popular and seen on pretty much every schedule for the next couple of years within iRacing. I think this track might even actually have the same type of participation and traction that Spa does, because it does suit everything so nicely. It just feels right. It's a very fun circuit I'm sure many of you guys are already familiar with. On the oval side of things, we have a new car and a new track. Car-wise, we have the Chevrolet Camaro SS Class B, otherwise known as the Camaro Nationwide car, which you're seeing on screen. This is a replacement for the Impala. It is exactly the same, although you're going to need to buy it if you only race the Impala, because they're retiring the Impala Class B that is currently there in favor of this car per real-world NASCAR rules. Yeah, that's been a talking point within the community, although if you did buy the Impala recently, you will get some credits to put towards the purchase of this thing. Yeah. I'm not sure how I feel about that, although I will say the Camaro does look much better racing out there versus the Impala, which that thing was just ugly as can be, and there's nobody out there who's going to disagree with me, whereas the Camaro actually looks cool and looks like it fits out there with the Mustang. And hey, we all know racing is about looking cool, right? Track-wise, we have the new version of Phoenix. This is the version that has the banking and all that stuff. And yes, you can cut the dog leg, as you've clearly have seen, although there are 2 versions of oval available. There is a version that you see right now, which is basically going to be used in the NASCAR stuff, that allows you to cut the dog leg, and then there's also a version that will be primarily used for cars such as the Indy car, where you're not allowed to cut the dog leg for various reasons, such as the fact that A, you couldn't even take the dog leg in an Indy car, bottom out on that apron, the car would blow up anyways. And that would be dangerous, as well as the fact that people rejoining the track out of left field, basically, at 195 miles an hour would also be dangerous. So they've done that, which is a good thing. That's a very good decision. This version of Phoenix does not have any road courses per the real world. The old version of Phoenix, the flat version of Phoenix, will still remain available, and you can pick that up for $5 now, although you're going to be seeing the new version of Phoenix used everywhere. Beyond the new content, there are 2 further improvements, and that makes it sound like it's really an insignificant build, but one of those improvements is huge, but I can't actually really show you that. But what I can show you is backfires, and lots of them, because it's the McLaren 12C GT3, which, yes, it is the flamethrower that it is in the real world, which is absolutely awesome. Backfire is now available on pretty much every car you would expect to be shooting flames. That means you're not going to see it on stuff like the MX-5 or the Solstice, but otherwise you're going to be seeing it all over the place. For right now, you will only see your opponents backfire from when they're downshifting or when they're off the throttle. When you're viewing yourself in replay, such as right now, you'll also see the backfire on upshifts. Which, you know what, yeah, it sucks to have the missing backfire from your opponents when they upshift, but otherwise it's a much needed improvement that doesn't necessarily improve the racing or anything like that. It just looks more visually immersive and stuff like that. It doesn't cast any lights or anything like that, as you can notice during the Phoenix portion of this video. But hopefully that'll be something that will come with that long-winded, long-rumored, long-talked-about DirectX 11 updates that iRacing has planned. As you would assume by then, they'd also get, you know, real-time reflections and different light sources and things like that. But yeah, it's a nice addition. It looks cool. It's nice to have backfire. That can't backfire on you. Heyo! Now we come to the tricky part. I can't really show you this, you just kind of have to take my word on this, because they are physics-related updates and tire model improvements, and they are definitely improvements. So to prove the improvements, I've fired up 12C GT3 at Donington once again, and you'll notice the difference if you've watched my previous 12C GT3 videos. Otherwise, you just need to know that the car does not like curves and it's prone to death wiggling. If I did that before this update, I would have been flung into the countryside like one of the airplanes that flies overhead in this game and in the real world. Like, seriously. Car would have been unsavable. It would have been wrecked 9 times out of 10. Whereas now with this update and the improvements that they've done to the tire model, which include a new tire wear curing code, which basically adds tire wear. It's not massive, but you should at least be slower at the end of the run than when you started the run, basically. It really isn't a lot of tire wear, but it is at least some tire wear. But they've also done some improvements to the solver, as they said, which is a very cryptic, like, answer. But basically what you need to know, the cars are a lot more predictable and a lot more savable and a lot less prone to death wiggling or making a correction to a slide that turns into a correction to a slide, and just, yeah. Honestly, it feels much better. Although I have noticed an increase in corner entry understeer, but that may be setup related. But seriously, it's a night and day difference on some of the cars, such as the McLaren, which actually feels like a car rather than something that's constantly trying to explode all the dang time. And then we come to the long-running joke, and I can't believe I'm actually about to say this. It still doesn't seem right in some way. The DW12 Indy car. Previously it was available only in the Indianapolis configuration. Now it is available in the road course, street course configuration, short oval configuration, and then the speedway configuration, as well as the Indianapolis configuration. You only need to purchase the car once and you get all of that, as well as the fact there are official sessions for both road course and oval racing with this car. So at the same price as a regular car, it does offer a bit of a bargain within iRacing. Now, despite the fact that I was looking forward to this car, despite the fact that I'm an IndyCar fan, despite the fact that I said that I was going to run this car in the road course and oval series next season, which I still plan on doing, I wasn't really expecting to like this car in road course configuration. And that comes down to the fact that saving slides within iRacing has always been very difficult. And if you watch the real world car race, you'll see a lot of sliding going on, which didn't look very good. The FW31, which is probably the closest thing within iRacing in terms of performance to the DW12, has never been a very good car within iRacing. I think most people would agree. Not necessarily all of them, but most of them. As well as the way the Star Mazda kind of ended up becoming the Star Mazda, where it went from a car that drove somewhat reasonably and was actually quite fun to a car where people basically turned it into a drift car with blatant disregard for tire wear and stuff like that, because there still really isn't any tire wear within iRacing. But you know, I was kind of worried. Not necessarily excited to actually drive the car, although I was hugely excited for the car to finally be here. But I'm shocked. I am very shocked, actually. You know, I'll put it this way: the biggest change, the simplest way I can put this in a way that people who have tried iRacing before can maybe understand, or people who have heard things about iRacing can understand. This is the first car I find myself actually looking forward to low-speed corners. And it comes down to two things. A, the fact that the car doesn't do anything silly and it doesn't spin out randomly. As well as B, the fact that when I exit the corner, I actually feel like I can put down a little bit too much power to kick out the rear end, get that nice little slide coming out of the corner. Not the fastest way, but it is the coolest way, and you know it. And have no drama. And it's like, I know I can save that slide. It's not going to result in a death wiggle. It's not going to cause the physics to basically explode and send me flying around into the wall just like randomly. It's like, car slides, I make the correction, we get on with it. And it actually happens within iRacing, which is something that shouldn't necessarily need to be said, or shouldn't be something that is worthy of praise and amazement, but for the longest time it hasn't been that way. But this car, as well as the other cars with the updates, now applied. And Z4 last season really showed indications of getting to a more normal level and not being silly left field most of the time. It's different. It's just so different, and I have to say that I'm shocked, for one, that this car actually works well within iRacing, as well as the fact that I actually enjoy it. In terms of actually driving the car and the way the car drives, it brakes very well. It has a lot of downforce, has a lot of grip. In terms of the way the car goes through the corners, I have found it is fairly understeery on corner entry. It's something that I'm kind of working on with setup-wise to maybe dial that out a little bit, because I'm not quite happy with it. Although it is something that you could probably deal with if you really needed to, but you have a setup, you have a lot of options in this car, and I mean a lot of setup options, so I'm going to go ahead and try and use them to dial that trait out. But then it's very neutral across the face of the corner. Depending on your differential settings seem to be very big in this car, and driving it with your right foot coming off of the corner, if you ask too much power, you'll get a little slide, and you can correct that basically all day without too much drama. And just a car that basically goes from understeer to oversteer coming out of the corner in a fairly normal, believable manner. In terms of setups, like I mentioned with the Star Mazda, I've done some work with the setups. Obviously, it's still very early, and this car has, I think, 4 or 5 full pages of setup options that you can go ahead and tweak. But I've got to a time where I'm running fairly competitive times, and the car's not doing silly things. It's not a drift car or anything like that. And in fact, if anything, it's actually become more difficult to drive as I've shaved lap time off. But at the same time, it hasn't become strange to drive. It stayed within that realm of plausibility, and really it hasn't changed anything other than the fact that the car feels more sensitive now that I've tweaked the setup a bit, going over the curves. But at the same time, going over the curbs, the car isn't trying to explode into 1,000 pieces. I just have to be careful of how I actually hit the curbs and what that's going to cause the suspension to do, and how the car's going to react and everything like that, which is what you should be doing. And it's like, it's so different than what I expected, and it's so different than what iRacing standards have been, that to actually have something like this, let alone a car that I was really excited for, let alone a car that I've wanted for a very long while within iRacing, and the torture that we've had to deal with in getting this car, it just, yes. So with that said, go ahead and take this car to Long Beach and have a blast. Hope you guys enjoy. All right, bye.